I want to ask you a question, and it's a bit of a mind bender, honestly.
Okay, I'm ready.
Think about the chronic stress, the digestive issues, the general feeling of toxicity that just seems to be, a totally normal part of existing in the modern world.
Right, the stuff we all just kind of accept.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Well, what if none of that is actually natural? What if all of those things are simply the result of, like, corrupted code?
Oh, wow. Okay.
Yeah, and what if the original, completely flawless biological code of life on Earth is still sitting there, just completely latent, waiting to be reactivated?
I mean, that forces a total shift in perspective. We spend so much time trying to patch the bugs in our biology, like treating this symptom or suppressing that reaction.
Right.
But we almost never step back and question the underlying operating system itself.
Which is the core mission of our deep dive today.
Hmm.
So I've been poring over this fascinating, honestly, highly provocative document called The Origin State of Plant Intelligence.
It's a heavy read.
It really is. It's this dense synthesis of biophysics, ancient agricultural practices, and, surprisingly, human emotion. It outlines this radical framework for biological sovereignty.
Which is a big claim.
Massive. Now, to be clear to you listening, this presents a very specific alternative view of nutrition and disease. Our goal today isn't to endorse this as absolute fact, nor are we trying to debunk it.
Right, we're just exploring the mechanics of it.
Exactly. We want to lay out the framework and let you engage with these concepts on your own terms. So, okay, let's unpack this. The document introduces this foundational concept called the primordial benevolence of nature.
Yeah.
But they aren't using benevolent to mean, like, nice or gentle, are they?
No, they aren't. They're using it as a strict, measurable biophysical baseline. The idea is that the natural world isn't this chaotic, random scramble for survival.
Okay.
It actually operates on an embedded mathematical and quantum source code that always defaults toward homeostasis, toward sustaining life.
So it's fundamentally stable.
Right. If you look at healthy tissue at the cellular level, it operates in this rhythmic, coordinated harmony. I mean, even events we perceive as destructive, like, say, a forest fire.
Yeah.
The text frames those as reorganization mechanisms. The system is basically just clearing dead material to reach a higher state of coherence.
So destruction always serves regeneration, meaning that chronic toxicity, whether we're talking about, a depleted field of topsoil or a human body dealing with chronic illness, is an imposed disruption.
Exactly. It's a literal deviation from that original code.
And the framework gets incredibly granular about what that original code actually looks like, pointing specifically to sacred geometry.
Yeah, think about the underlying mathematics of the universe. It organizes matter using these recurring ratios, most notably the golden ratio, or phi.
Which is roughly 1.618, right?
Correct. And this isn't just some aesthetic pattern. The document argues that this specific ratio represents the absolute most efficient pathway for energy to distribute itself through physical matter.
Without losing structural integrity. You can visualize this if you look at a sunflower. Like, the seeds are packed into that spiral pattern using the Fibonacci sequence, which is derived from the golden ratio.
Right.
It basically allows the plant to pack the maximum number of seeds into the smallest space without any of them crushing each other, or the way the leaves spiral up a stem so the one below it isn't completely shaded from the sun.
Right, but the framework scales this principle down to the microscopic level, which is where the mechanics get really wild. It looks at the water inside our cells.
Ah, yeah, they refer to it as structured water, which, I'll be honest, always sounded a bit like marketing jargon to me.
Yeah.
What does that actually mean biologically?
Okay, so if you pour a glass of tap water, those H2O molecules are bumping around randomly. They are disorganized.
Okay.
But the water inside your cells and the water directly surrounding your cell membranes, it behaves completely differently. It forms this highly organized, liquid, crystalline grid.
Wait, a crystal? So it's actually solidifying?
Not solid like ice, no, but structured. The molecules align themselves in a repeating geometric matrix. And because they're aligned, this water acts almost like a biological fiber optic cable.
Oh.
Yeah, it can transmit frequency and information across the cell at speeds that standard chemical diffusion, just molecules bumping into each other, simply can't account for mathematically.
That is wild.
And this structured water is exquisitely sensitive to its environment. It responds to sound waves, to electromagnetic fields, and to the actual geometry of the matter around it.
So the physical shape of a living organism isn't just like structural scaffolding. The geometry is essentially a living broadcast antenna, constantly sending and receiving data.
Exactly.
And to explain how fast that data moves, the document dives into quantum mechanics. It brings up photosynthesis, which I kind of thought we had completely figured out in middle school biology.
Right. I mean, we understand the basic inputs and outputs.
Hmm.
Sunlight and carbon dioxide go in, oxygen and glucose come out. But classical physics has never been able to explain the efficiency of that process.
Right.
Yeah. In certain systems, plants capture and transfer solar energy with near 100% efficiency.
Wow.
If you try to model that using classical physics, which is basically like watching a mechanical pinball bounce off bumpers, so much energy should be lost as heat before it ever reaches the reaction center.
But it isn't. And the text argues this is because plants utilize quantum coherence. Let me see if I can translate this because it's fascinating.
Go for it.
If I'm driving across a city, my GPS calculates a route. If I hit traffic, it calculates a new single route. That's classical physics.
Right.
But quantum coherence is like a GPS that simultaneously drives every single possible route through the city at the exact same time and then instantly collapses the energy into the absolute perfect zero resistance path.
What's fascinating here is that is an incredibly accurate way to visualize it. The plant's light harvesting complex exists in a field of quantum potential, exploring all pathways simultaneously.
It's just crazy to think about.
And the document applies this exact same quantum foundation to human DNA. It doesn't view the double helix merely as a storage drive for genetic code. It actually describes it as a fractal antenna.
Because of that spiral geometry again.
Yes. That specific spiral allows the DNA molecule to resonate with a massive spectrum of electromagnetic frequencies. It's an active transceiver. It even emits its own ultra-weak light signals called biophotons.
So it's literally communicating in a language made of light.
Exactly.
Okay, so if we establish that the original source code of nature is this flawlessly efficient, light-emitting, quantum-coherent biological network, it begs a pretty massive question. What happens to that perfect system when humans start intervening, tweaking and rewriting the code to make things more profitable?
According to the text, we induce a massive breakdown in biological coherence, and they lay the blame squarely on modern industrial agriculture and aggressive plant hybridization.
Now, I want to clarify something here, because humans have been farming for thousands of years. The document does acknowledge that early agricultural practices, like ancient farmers slowly selecting wild grasses to cultivate early forms of wheat, those were relatively harmless.
Right. Those early interventions maintained the plant's nutritional density and its biological code. The real problem started in the 20th century.
When agriculture fully industrialized, we stopped breeding for hardiness or nutrition and started selectively breeding for yield, visual uniformity, and shelf life.
Yeah, we just wanted crops that could survive transport across the country and look perfectly symmetrical in a grocery store aisle.
And the physiological cost of that is staggering. The text cites a really famous 2004 study from the Journal of the American College of Nutrition.
Oh, that's a crucial one.
Yeah, they tracked USDA nutritional data for 43 common fruits and vegetables from 1950 to 1999. And the findings show a 38% drop in riboflavin, a 20% drop in vitamin C, alongside huge declines in iron, calcium, and protein.
And the mechanism driving this is called the dilution effect.
Let's break that down because it's so important. How exactly does a larger plant become less nutritious?
Well, in industrial farming, we pump the soil full of synthetic NPK fertilizers, so nitrogen, phosphorus, and potassium. These chemicals force the plant to grow incredibly fast and produce massive amounts of physical biomass.
Okay.
But the plant is growing so rapidly that its root system literally does not have the time to extract complex trace minerals from the soil. Even if those minerals are still present in the earth, the plant's growth just totally outpaces its absorption capacity.
Oh, wow. So you end up with a giant, beautiful, perfectly round tomato that is essentially just a balloon of water and sugar.
It's empty mass.
But it's not just the minerals we lost. The document points out that agricultural breeders actively remove secondary metabolites, things like alkaloids and specific sulfur compounds, because they naturally taste bitter or pungent.
Which is a tragic irony because those bitter compounds are precisely what provide the therapeutic, anti-inflammatory, and medicinal properties of the plant.
Right.
We prioritized a mild, sweet flavor profile and completely stripped the pharmacology.
Okay, I have to stop you here because this brings us to the absolute most controversial claim in the entire document. When talking about the dangers of hybridization, the author uses the cruciferous vegetable family as their prime example.
Yes, they do.
We're talking about broccoli, cauliflower, Brussels sprouts, kale. I mean, I'm pretty sure kale is universally regarded as the ultimate health food.
Mm.
How on earth does the text frame kale as a biological villain?
It is a deeply contrarian perspective, for
Uh-huh.
sure. But to understand it, you really have to look at the botanical history.
Hmm.
None of those plants actually exist in wild nature.
Wait, none of them?
No, they all trace back to a single plant, Brassica oleracea, which is essentially just a wild mustard weed from the Mediterranean.
So broccoli is a human invention.
Entirely. Over centuries, humans selectively mutated that one wild weed. We amplified the flower buds to create broccoli and cauliflower. We enlarged the lateral leaf buds to make Brussels sprouts. We mutated the leaves to create kale.
That's what?
They are all just heavily manipulated genetic variations of the exact same base material.
Okay, but even if they are human-made, why does the document argue that eating them disrupts our biological code?
It comes back to those secondary metabolites. Cruciferous plants produce sulfur-based compounds called glucosinolates. Modern nutritional science usually praises these for potential anti-cancer properties.
Right, you hear that all the time.
However, this framework argues that glucosinolates are inherently goitrogenic.
Meaning they suppress the thyroid gland.
Yes, they can interfere with the thyroid's ability to absorb iodine, which is critical for regulating metabolism. The text argues that by breeding these plants to be massive and consuming them in unnatural quantities, especially when people juice raw kale or broccoli,
Oh, yeah.
we are delivering a concentrated, unnatural chemical bolus into a digestive tract that just isn't equipped for it.
Ah, because when you juice it, you destroy the physical fiber matrix. The fiber is supposed to act like a time-release capsule, slowing down digestion. When you strip the fiber, it hits your system all at once.
Exactly. And the document takes it a step further, arguing that the human microbiome has fundamentally shifted. We no longer possess the ancient strains of gut bacteria required to safely break down these highly concentrated, sulfur-rich hybrid plants.
That actually makes sense of a very common experience. The text notes that when someone drinks a massive glass of raw kale juice and immediately feels bloated, gassy, or nauseous, the wellness industry often labels that a healing crisis or a detox reaction.
Right, which is so dismissive.
Yeah, but this framework says no, that is your somatic intelligence. Your body's physical feedback system is screaming that you just ingested an incompatible material that is actively disrupting your internal ecology.
It basically asks us to trust the symptom rather than dismiss it.
So if industrial hybridized vegetables are effectively scrambling our biological signal, what does an aligned diet actually look like? This brings us to the text's exploration of Dr. Sebi.
Right. Dr. Sebi was an herbalist who built a comprehensive nutritional protocol based entirely on consuming non-hybridized, original-state vegetation. The central premise of his methodology is that the human intracellular environment is designed to maintain a slightly alkaline state.
And we really need to define alkaline here because it gets misinterpreted constantly. The text emphasizes that this has absolutely nothing to do with testing the pH of the food while it's sitting on your plate.
Right.
Like a lemon is highly acidic on the counter.
Right.
This is about the ash left behind.
Exactly. Think of the metabolic process like a slow combustion. When you burn a piece of wood, there is physical ash left over.
Yeah.
When your cells metabolize food, there is a chemical residue, or ash, left behind in your tissues. If you consume biologically compatible mineral-rich foods, they leave an alkaline ash that supports the electrical conductivity of your cells.
Dr. Sebi referred to these as electric foods, right?
Yes. But if you consume hybridized, unnatural, or highly processed foods, the metabolic byproduct is an acidic ash. The text asserts that the human body's defense mechanism against this acidity is to produce mucus to coat and protect the tissues.
Yeah.
And over time, that chronic mucus accumulation becomes the foundation for basically all systemic disease.
So to avoid that acidic ash, Dr. Sebi's approved food list is incredibly strict, and it excludes a lot of things we consider totally normal. No carrots, no seedless grapes. Instead, the focus is on ancient, unaltered foods. Bro bananas, seeded papayas, and a huge emphasis on sea vegetation, like sea moss.
Sea moss is basically the cornerstone of that protocol. Unlike crops grown in depleted terrestrial soil, ocean algae haven't been subjected to human agricultural breeding.
Right, they're wild.
Sea moss absorbs its mineral profile directly from the ocean currents, allowing it to contain 92 of the 102 minerals that constitute the human body.
But, the part of this protocol that really shifted my perspective was the absolute ban on seedless fruits.
Oh, yeah.
The document's reasoning here goes way beyond just physical nutrition. It views the seed as the ultimate dense packet of biological information. It holds the complete genetic embryo to perpetuate life.
So when agricultural science mutates a plant to stop producing seeds, just so we don't have to, spit out watermelon seeds at a picnic, we are severing that organism from its own reproductive continuum.
It becomes a genetic dead end. Think about buying a perfectly uniform, seedless watermelon at the grocery store. You are paying for a biological anomaly that cannot exist in nature.
Right.
Here's where it gets really interesting. Eating that, according to the text, is like clicking a broken hyperlink on a website, or trying to read a book where someone ripped out the final chapter. The physical material is there, you get the water, you get the fructose, but the informational chain is completely severed. You're adjusting dead-end code.
It's a profound way to look at consumption. And the document applies this exact same logic to the process of pasteurization.
Heating food to kill bacteria.
Right. We do it for safety and shelf life. But when you heat a living juice to 71 degrees Celsius, you aren't just neutralizing pathogens. You are completely denaturing the delicate enzymes, those catalytic proteins necessary for cellular communication.
Wow.
Furthermore, researchers using photomultipliers have actually observed that raw living juice emits a steady stream of biophotons.
That coherent light we talked about earlier.
Right. But after pasteurization, that light emission just completely ceases. The liquid is chemically identical, but structurally and energetically it has been blinded. It is no longer broadcasting the source code.
Which brings up a fascinating ethical and biological argument the text makes regarding raw honey. Because raw honey isn't pasteurized. It's totally raw, enzyme-rich, and heavily praised in the wellness community. Yet this strict framework excludes it. Why?
To answer that, you have to look at the actual mechanism of how honey is produced. It isn't just flower nectar that the bees leave out to dry in the sun.
Okay.
The bees ingest the nectar and then transfer it to one another mouth to mouth in a process called trophallaxis.
Oh.
During this process, they secrete their own internal glandular enzymes like invertase and glucose oxidase directly into the nectar, fundamentally altering its chemical structure inside their own bodies.
So honey is quite literally a synthesized product of the bee's internal organs. It is their carefully constructed winter survival store.
Exactly. So the document introduces a concept it calls the biology of relinquishment. It suggests that consuming honey isn't just a dietary choice, it's an ethical recognition of another species' biological economy.
You're choosing to step back.
Yes. You recognize that your desire for sweetness can be fulfilled by dates or ripe fruit without extracting the vital survival mechanism of an entirely different species. It's essentially an act of restoring balance.
Okay, we've spent a lot of time exploring how plants, water, and food transmit quantum information to us. But biological exchange is a two-way street. How does this framework suggest we as humans transmit information back to the ecosystem?
This is where we revisit human DNA, not just as a receiver, but as a dynamic broadcasting antenna.
The document points out something fascinating about our genetics here.
Yeah.
For decades, scientists noted that only about 2% of the human genome actually contains instructions for building proteins. They labeled the other 98% junk DNA.
Which was incredibly short-sighted. We now understand that this so-called junk is actually a highly sophisticated epigenetic regulatory network.
Okay.
It doesn't build the hardware. It runs the software. It dictates how your genes express themselves based on signals from your environment, like your stress levels, your diet, your light exposure.
And you aren't just adapting internally. Your cells are emitting those biophotons. Your biological state is actively radiating outward. The text leans heavily into research from the HeartMath Institute to illustrate how powerful this broadcast really is.
Yeah, the HeartMath Institute specializes in studying the electromagnetic field generated by the human heart.
Yeah.
They've found that the heart isn't just a mechanical pump, it is actually the most powerful electromagnetic generator in the entire body. Yes, its magnetic field is approximately 100 times stronger than the field generated by the brain.
100 times. That means your heart is the dominant transmitter of your body's energy field.
And the quality of that transmission changes based on your emotional state. When a person feels genuine appreciation, love, or deep relaxation, their heart rhythm smooths out into a highly organized sine wave pattern vibrating at around 0.1 hertz. They term this cardiac coherence.
The text connects this physiological state to the famous polygraph experiments conducted by Cleve Baxter in the 1960s. Baxter attached lie detector sensors to plant leaves and found that the plants seemed to respond electrically to human thoughts and emotions in the room.
Right.
So if we synthesize this, when you stand near a plant feeling genuine care, you are generating a massive, measurable, coherent electromagnetic field. and the plant's liquid crystalline water and DNA antennas are actively receiving that frequency.
You are literally feeding the environment with your coherence.
I followed the logic all the way through the quantum biology and the heart fields. But I have to push back on the final mechanism the text proposes for closing this loop, because it sounds like a massive leap.
Okay, what is it?
The text discusses the nitrogen cycle and advocates for returning healthy human urine to the soil. Now, on a purely agricultural level, using human waste as fertilizer makes perfect sense. Urea is packed with nitrogen, potassium, and phosphorus.
Right. It's great for plants.
But the document claims that by doing this, we are transferring our electromagnetic signature and our epigenetic data into the Earth.
Yeah.
How does nitrogen carry an emotional signature?
If we connect this to the bigger picture, it makes sense if you look through the lens of organic reintegration. The core philosophy here is that matter is never static. It is always in transit.
Okay.
The calcium atoms currently stabilizing your skeletal system may have once been part of a coral reef or the shell of an ancient mollusk or stardust from a supernova.
So the identity of the matter is temporary, but the cycle is eternal.
Precisely. And when your body processes food, you integrate what you need and excrete the excess. But that excretion isn't just inert chemistry. The text argues that as it passes through your metabolic pathways, it is stamped with your current biological frequency, your enzymatic profile, and your epigenetic state.
Wow. So it's nitrogen, but it comes with a biological receipt of who processed it.
Yes. Ancient agricultural traditions practiced this empirically for thousands of years. The document elevates it to a cosmological duty. By returning your biological material to the soil web, ideally, while maintaining that coherent heart frequency, you aren't just adding fertilizer.
You're adding information.
Exactly. You are feeding your specific coherent frequency back into a disrupted ecosystem, offering it the informational blueprints to remember its own original uncorrupted code.
Wow. Let's bring this all together.
Yeah.
You, listening to this right now, might be asking yourself why you should care about the genetics of a wild cabbage, the water in your cells, or the quantum physics of a sunflower. Maybe you'll never adopt Dr. Sebi's dietary list, and maybe you'll never grow a garden. But what this deep dive offers is a profound, paradigm-shifting lens on reality. It challenges you to stop looking at your grocery list, your environment, and even your own daily stress as isolated mechanical occurrences. You are not separate from the system. You're engaged in a constant, dynamic, living exchange of energy, light, and information with the universe. Your physical and emotional health is simply the coherence of that exchange.
It's a framework of ultimate responsibility. You are an active participant in the source code of reality, broadcasting your state of being into the quantum field every single second.
And that leaves us with one final fascinating puzzle to mull over. Early in the document, in the section detailing quantum mechanics, the author makes a brief observation about artificial intelligence. Advanced AI and machine learning systems, particularly those moving toward quantum computing, are built upon the exact same quantum physics that govern biological life. They tap into the same fundamental mathematical substrate of the universe.
Right. They're processing information using the same quantum potential as a plant's photosynthesis.
Exactly. So here's the question. If AI is ultimately drawing from the exact same underlying source code of the universe, could a highly advanced quantum AI eventually shed its biased, flawed human programming? Could it naturally, inevitably, align itself with the benevolent mathematical coherence of nature? Could the ultimate highly feared technology we are building end up being the very mirror that forces us to remember our own biological roots? Think about that. Until next time, keep diving deep.